Welcome back to another deep dive. And wow, today we're tackling a really fascinating question that came straight from you.
Yeah, this one was great.
It's about this ancient Greek term hilasmos, or the verb form hilaskomai.
Mm-hmm.
You asked how its meaning, journeyed from classical literature, specifically asking about Agamemnon all the way through the Septuagint and into the New Testament. It's quite the trip.
It really is. And it's such a sharp question because you're not just asking, for a dictionary definition.
No, definitely not.
You're tracking how a word and the whole concept behind it evolves across, huge cultural and religious divides. It's about seeing how context radically changes meaning.
Absolutely. Your initial curiosity really nailed it. Hilasmos, in classical Greece, Agamemnon, this ancient idea of appeasing angry gods. So our mission today is to unpack that connection first.
Right.
Then look at how this idea of propitiation just transforms, really transforms, between those worlds, and why getting these nuances is, frankly, crucial for understanding some deep theological ideas later on.
Exactly. It's about getting the why. So we'll start right there in Agamemnon's world. Very dramatic. See what appease meant then.
Okay.
Then we'll follow those Greek words as they get, almost repurposed, you could say, in the Septuagint, the LXX, the Greek Old Testament.
Right. The translation factor.
Yeah, a huge factor. And finally, we'll draw this just stark contrast between the pagan idea and the biblical one, show how different they really are.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Get ready for some, maybe some aha moments along the way.
Hopefully. Let's dive in.
All right. Let's start unpacking Agamemnon. So our journey begins way back. Homer, the Iliad, Canto 1.
Classic stuff.
You have to picture it, right? Outside Troy, the Greek camp, and there's Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, leader of the Greeks, big deal, powerful guy.
Huge figure. And the Iliad kicks off not with a battle, but with a plague, a disaster. And the cause, pure Agamemnon.
Is full.
Entirely. He pulls this classic move of hubris, excessive pride. He dishonors Chryses, who's a priest of Apollo.
Very bad move.
Very bad move. Chryses wants his captured daughter, Chryseis, back. Offers a ransom. Agamemnon basically tells him to get lost. He's insulting not just the man, but the god he serves.
Oof. And in those Greek stories, you just don't do that, right? Insulting a priest, especially Apollo's priest.
It's like poking a bear, a very powerful, divine bear. This wasn't just rude. It triggers the menace Apollonos, the wrath of Apollo, and Apollo doesn't mess around. He sends this plague down on the Greek camp.
Like literally arrows raining down.
Well, invisibly. But people are dying left and right. It's chaos. The connection is immediate. Divine offense leads to divine wrath, leads to total disaster.
Okay, so they know why it's happening. How do they stop it? Apollo needs to be appeased, right?
Exactly, appeased. The prophet Calchas comes forward, explains, Apollo's angry because of Agamemnon and Chryses, and this is where our verb pops up, Hilaskomai, to appease, to propitiate.
Ah, there it is.
Yep, Iliad 1, lines 94-95. It basically says the god isn't appeased because Agamemnon dissed the priest. The core problem is Apollo is not favorable. He needs to be made favorable again.
So how do you do that in ancient Greece? What's the mechanism for this Hilaskomai?
Well, Calchas spells it out. Step 1, return Chryseis to her father. No ransom this time. Gotta acknowledge the wrong.
Okay, restitution.
Right. Step 2, and this is crucial, offer a huge sacrifice. A hecatomb, that's exatube, a sacrifice of 100 oxen to Apollo in a sacred place, Chrysa.
100 oxen, that's significant.
Oh, yeah, it's a massive public act. So this whole package, the restitution, the massive sacrifice, that's the hilasmos in action, functionally speaking. Even if Homer doesn't use the noun right there, the action is designed hilasistai Apollo to make him favorable, to turn off the wrath.
Right, to fix the relationship or at least stop the plague.
Exactly. Though Agamemnon.
Oh no, what does he do now?
Well, he agrees to return Chryseis, but then, almost immediately, because his pride is wounded, he commits another offense. He takes Briseis, who was Achilles' captive pride.
Oh, that's not going to end well.
Not at all. That sparks Achilles' own massive menace, his wrath, which then drives, like most of the rest of the Iliad. It's just this cycle. Offense, wrath, need for appeasement, new offense.
So the gods in Homer, they're not just justly angry. They seem kind of vengeful, easily offended, needing constant management.
That's a good way to put it. They're powerful forces, almost like forces of nature, that humans have upset and need to bring back into balance through these specific, often costly actions.
Okay, so summing up the Homeric view, Hilasmos, or the concept behind it, is about humans reacting to divine anger.
Yeah, fundamentally. In that classical world, the pattern is clear. Human offense provokes divine, or sometimes powerful human, wrath. Wrath brings disaster. Disaster only stops when humans perform an act of propitiation. That means recognizing the fault, making restitution, and offering compensation sacrifices, gifts, begging forgiveness.
And Agamemnon is kind of the poster child for needing this system because of his arrogance, his hubris.
Absolutely. His actions constantly disrupt the balance and necessitate these mechanisms just to restore some kind of order, both socially and, cosmically.
Wow, okay. That paints a really clear picture of that ancient pagan world. Now, this leads us right into your really sharp observation, the one that kicked this whole thing off. You asked, okay, what Greek word was used for expiatory sacrifice back then with Agamemnon? Especially because you notice the Septuagint is really specific when it translates Hebrew terms like sham and jatat, the guilt and sin offerings. Those are different from, say, Ziva, the communion sacrifice.
Exactly. It's a brilliant question because it highlights a key point. Homer, as we saw, doesn't really have a single technical term like expiatory sacrifice.
It just describes the action.
Right. He describes the act like the hecatomb, the 100 oxen, and he describes the purpose using the verb hilaskomai to appease, make favorable. It's narrative. It's epic poetry, not like a systematic theology textbook.
Okay, but then, fast forward a few centuries, and you have the Septuagint translators. They're facing Hebrew scripture full of these really specific theological concepts about sin and sacrifice. How do they translate those into Greek, a language that didn't have those exact ideas built in? How do they handle asham and shatat?
This is where it gets really fascinating linguistically and theologically. For asham, the Hebrew word for a guilt offering or trespass offering.
Okay.
The LXX translators usually went with plemilia. Now, that Greek word means things like error, fault, mistake.
So it focuses on the guilt itself.
Yeah.
Not the sacrifice for the guilt.
Exactly. It highlights the offense, the moral fault that needs dealing with. The sacrifice was the means, but the Greek word they chose points to the problem, the plemelia, a subtle shift in emphasis already.
Interesting. Okay, what about shatat, the sin offering? That one seems central.
It is. And here they did something even more innovative. They basically couldn't find a single perfect Greek word, so they created a technical phrase, Peri Hamartias.
Peri Hamartias.
Peri Hamartias.
Literally, it means something concerning sin, or on account of sin. Often the context made it clear they meant sacrifice concerning sin, implying the word thesia, sacrifice. But the phrase itself, Peri Hamartias, was essentially new Greek theological vocabulary, coined specifically for this Hebrew concept.
Wow, so they weren't just translating, they were like building a new theological language within Greek. That's incredible.
It really is. It shows how carefully they were thinking. But then you made another crucial connection. You pointed out the root of Hilaskomai is hileos.
Right.
And in the LXX, hileos itself can mean things like grace, mercy, or acceptance. And the example you brought up, Jacob and Esau from Genesis 32.
Perfect.
Yeah, tell us about that one again.
Okay, so Jacob is terrified of meeting Esau after, cheating him years ago. He sends waves of gifts ahead, saying, in the LXX Greek, Elos isomayata, I will make him propitious towards me. Or maybe better, I will find favor with him.
Okay.
Now, the Hebrew there is matzahen, which means I will find grace or I will find favor. Jacob isn't doing a sacrifice to appease Esau like a god. He's trying to achieve relational reconciliation. He's trying to soften Esau's heart to gain acceptance.
Oh, so Hilaskomai here isn't just about stopping wrath. It's about making someone favorable, gaining acceptance in a relationship.
Exactly. It broadens the meaning significantly. It's not just placating anger, but fundamentally about making someone well-disposed, gaining their favor. So hilasmos, the noun, becomes less about just appeasement and more about the act of making propitious, or the means by which favor or acceptance is obtained. It's more relational.
That is a much richer meaning. Less about fear, more about restoration.
Precisely. And your point about Psalm 65, verse 3 really drives this home. Comparing the Hebrew and the Greek there is so revealing.
Okay, let's look at that. The Hebrew text says,
the Hebrew Masoretic text says something like, our iniquities overpower us. You, God, will expiate them, tekaperem. So God acts to cover or forgive our internal guilt. God is the actor.
Okay, God deals with the sin. Now, how does the LXX translate that?
The LXX translates it quite differently. The words of the lawless prevailed over us. You, God, will make our impieties propitious. See hilasa.
Whoa, wait. Make our impieties propitious. That sounds odd. How does God make impiety propitious?
It is striking, isn't it? First, notice the problem is slightly externalized words of the lawless, maybe oppression. But the key thing is the verb. God doesn't just forgive the sin. He actively makes the state of impiety itself somehow acceptable or finds a way to deal with it so it's no longer a barrier. He performs the hilaskomai on our situation.
So God isn't the one being propitiated anymore.
Exactly. That's the massive theological shift happening here. In passages like this in the LXX, God ceases to be the object that needs appeasing by human ritual. He becomes the subject, the one who provides the means for restoring favor and acceptance. He takes the initiative.
It's his grace, his mercy, that makes the way for us to be acceptable to him.
Precisely. It flips the Agamemnon model completely on its head. It's divine initiative, not human appeasement.
Okay, this shift is huge, and that brings us straight to your really powerful critique. You said trying to explain biblical hilasmos using Agamemnon is, quote, tremendously violent. Why that strong word?
Because it is violent to the text and to the theology. You're taking a model born out of fear, manipulation, and a view of capricious, easily angered deities, and you're forcing it onto a completely different revelation of God's character and his relationship with humanity. It fundamentally misunderstands who the biblical God is.
So it's not just a different context, it's like comparing apples and, well, something totally alien.
Exactly. You're imposing a pagan framework onto a covenantal one. It's like trying to understand a loving father by studying a kidnapper demanding ransom. Both might involve a payment, but the nature of the relationship, the motivation, the entire dynamic is diametrically opposed.
That's a really strong analogy. Let's break down that clash properly. Pagan versus biblical. First, the nature of God or the gods.
Right. In Agamemnon's world, gods are, frankly, often fickle, jealous, quick to anger. Wrath feels like their default setting, and they need constant management, constant appeasement.
But the biblical God.
The biblical God is revealed as holy, yes, absolutely just, but also consistently as slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. That's Exodus 34, a foundational text. God's wrath isn't some unpredictable mood swing.
It's a response.
It's a righteous, just response to sin, to the violation of his perfect holiness and his covenant love. It's predictable in the sense that sin does break fellowship with the holy God, but it's not capricious. It's not his basic disposition that needs calming.
Okay, huge difference there. Then, the basis of the relationship itself.
For the pagan world, as we saw, it's basically transactional. Humans do rituals, offer things to buy favor or, stop the punishment. Quid pro quo. I give this, you stop hurting me.
Whereas the biblical relationship is
Covenantal. Beret. It's founded on God's faithful love, his hesed. His mercy comes before the law, even. It's a relationship initiated by God's grace, not a deal struck under duress.
And that leads to the third point. Who takes the initiative for reconciliation?
In the pagan model, like with Agamemnon, it's always human initiative. Humans mess up, humans figure out how to fix it, humans perform the appeasing action.
But in the Bible,
it is always divine initiative. God, out of his own love and mercy, provides the way back. He provides the sacrificial system in the Old Testament. Ultimately, he provides Christ in the New Testament. God makes the way to remove the sin that caused the breach in the first place. He reaches out to us.
So putting it all together, biblical Hilasmos isn't really about changing God's mind because his mind is already inclined towards mercy.
Exactly. It's not about calming some volatile emotion in God. It's about addressing the real, objective problem of human sin. Sin creates this barrier between a holy God and us. The Hilasmos is God's loving, gracious provision to remove that barrier, to eliminate the sin.
So it resolves the problem of God's just wrath by dealing with the cause of that wrath, our sin, thereby restoring the relationship he always wanted.
Precisely. It's not a bribe to make God less angry. It's God's remedy for our condition, allowing his inherent love and justice to both be satisfied.
Which brings us back perfectly to the kidnapper versus loving father analogy.
Yes. The payment or action happens in both scenarios, but one is rooted in fear, coercion, and appeasing an external threat. The other is rooted in love, grace, and restoring a broken relationship from the inside out, initiated by the one who is wronged but still loves.
Completely different motivations, different outcomes.
Totally different universes, really. And this is where the New Testament brings it all to a head. The letter to the Hebrews picks up that LXX language, Peri Hamartias, concerning sin, and also uses hyper hamartio on behalf of sins to talk about Christ's sacrifice.
As the ultimate perfect fulfillment of what those Old Testament sacrifices pointed towards.
Right. And then, as you pointed out, 1 John just comes right out and says it. Jesus is the Hilasmos for our sins.
So Jesus himself is the means by which we gain God's favor and acceptance.
Exactly. He is the act of propitiation, but understood in this radically different God-initiated way. It's not Jesus persuading an angry father to be nice. It's the Father, through the Son's willing sacrifice, removing the sin that separated us from the Father's constant love and grace. God provides his own solution to the problem we created. It's reconciliation enacted by God himself out of love.
Wow. Okay. What an incredible arc we've traced today. We started way back on the battlefield with Agamemnon, desperately trying to appease an angry Apollo with rituals born out of fear. A very human-centered action.
Transactional.
Then we saw the subtle but profound shifts in the Septuagint, where Greek words got reshaped, repurposed to talk about Hebrew ideas of grace, acceptance, and crucially, God taking the initiative.
Building that new theological vocabulary.
Right. And finally, landing in the New Testament where Hilasmos is radically redefined. It's not about humans calling God, but about God himself, in Christ, providing the ultimate means of reconciliation by dealing with our sin out of his own slow-to-anger, abundant love.
And you, our listener, you really put your finger on the core issue right from the start. Your question wasn't just linguistic, it was deeply theological. It forced us to see how vital it is to understand the whole world, the culture, the view of God, the relationship behind a word, not just the dictionary definition.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, here's maybe something to chew on. Think about this. The exact same Greek word, hilasmos, could describe, on the one hand, a human scrambling to bribe a moody, dangerous deity. Pure pagan appeasement.
Driven by fear.
Driven by fear. Yet, in another context, that same word describes the ultimate act of divine grace. A loving God, defined by steadfast love, providing the way at immense cost to himself to bring rebellious humanity back into relationship with him.
It's quite the contrast.
It really is. So what did that tell us about language itself, its power and its limitations? And maybe more profoundly, what does it reveal about how different cultures conceive of the divine? Does it help us distinguish between perhaps human projections of our own flaws onto God versus what might be actual divine revelation? Something to think about.